Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to another running session. So today I've decided that I'm going to try and do a running session with named locomotives, obviously named locomotives being individual locos that actually have nameplates or names somewhere written on the loco rather than just nicknames or class names or something like that. So the plan for this video, and I'm laughing because it didn't exactly go to plan, was to do something similar to what I did with the Victorian tank engines running session, where I basically took every single one that I own, put them into the sidings and showed them to you. Now, as it turns out, I massively overestimated the number of named locos I had. In fact, it turns out that about a quarter of my collection was named. So I did try to put them all into the sidings. I did try for you, but unfortunately there was just far too many, so I had to do a slightly different plan. So I have still filled the sidings, and yeah, you can see sort of some of them in the background there, but what I've had to do is I've just taken one member of each class. So sometimes there are lots and lots of engines from the same class that are named. I've got quite a few hall classes, for example, and there was a schools class as well, yeah, quite a lot of schools class locos that are named. So I've just, where I've got multiple members of the same class, all with names, I've just picked one just to thin the numbers down a bit. And even though I've done that, there's still an awful lot to get through. So here we go, named locos. Hope you enjoy this. I'm going to show you them all first, or most of them first. Sounded like I was from New York there. And then after that, we will get 6 of them running or so and have a bit of a running session with them. So enjoy it. Hope you like this one. And let's see if I can remember all the names. Alright, so it's still pretty early for me at the moment, so I thought we would start with some really famous ones, and we're going LNER to start with, as you can see. So, possibly the most famous, or I suppose arguably second most famous named loco of them all is of course A4 Mallard, very famous. Obviously lots of A4s had names, in fact probably all of them did at some point or other. Not 100% sure about that. Then we've got, of course, the either the first or second most famous named loco. It is, of course, the Flying Scotsman. Now, I had thought that this was an A3, but looking at this, think it's more like an A1. However, I could be completely wrong because I'm a bit pants at recognising them. But either way, I think the Flying Scotsman had to appear, didn't she? Okay, so then we have the A1 and the A2. So there we go, these are peppercorn A1s and A2, so not the same as Scotsman. So we have Bachelor's Button and WP Allen, they have their names printed onto the smoke deflectors. And then another one, this is another peppercorn A1, obviously, it's the Tornado. I sort of have broken my own rule there, haven't I, within seconds of just picking one of each class. But of course that's a rebuilt Tornado, built in, well finished in 2008, wasn't it? So yeah, I think that one deserves being shown at least. So moving on to the turntable then, in the foreground here we have Gilwell Park, which is a B17, I believe it is. Then we have a what's that one? I'm going to go with D49, that one's it, and that one's the Burton, number 238. Then we have the D16, which is Claude Hamilton, number 8900, lovely LNER green. Those 440s have got the nameplates just over the front splasher, as you can see. Then we have another very famous one. It is, of course, Cock of the North. Yes, let's all have a little laugh at the name. And, yep, obviously that's got the nameplate just on the front. I suppose what you would call smoke deflectors, although they're not really. Then we have the B1. I think this one's Impala. And, yes, it's got the nameplate just on the smoke box there. And then I think I've gone and got another A1 in here, another Gresley A1, but I thought it was worth showing it. So this one is the Woolwinder, of course, in the lovely glossy green, which is very nice indeed. So if I just pan out again, there we go. That is the collection of LNER named locos. So now let's get to some of the Southern Railway ones then. So we're in front of the turntable now, and we have a very lovely one. This is Lord Nelson class, and I think that one's Sir Francis Drake, isn't it? Lovely 460. Then we have another 460 from the Southern Railway. This one is, of course, an N15, or a King Arthur, if you want to call it that. And that one is Sir Levine. It has got a nameplate, but it's a very tiny one, just sort of midway along the running board there. Then one that I'm sure lots of you will recognise, and again, lots of these had names again, I think probably all of them did, didn't they? It is, of course, the Battle of Britain / West Country class, and that one is Camelford. Very nice. I'll just come round the beam. There we go. So here is yet another Bully Pacific, designed by the same guy, but it is a different class. This one is the Merchant Navy, obviously, and that one is Canadian Pacific. Very lovely engine, that. Then we have, well, I mentioned this earlier, It is, of course, the schools class, if I get in a bit close there. Lots of these had names. This one's number 911, and it's Dover, of course. And that will do it for the southern locos. So if I come back out again, I'll show you those. If I get them in focus. There we go. So not an awful lot. Not as many as from the LNER, but still quite a few nonetheless. So if we move on then from the Southern Railway ones, we move on to the Great Western ones, and yeah, this is where it gets a bit crazy. So even though I've only taken one example from each class, there are just so many classes from the Great Western, all of which seem to get named. So yeah, we've got quite a lot here. How many? 2, 4, 6, at least 8 here. So let's start up in the top corner then. I realise you might not see these particularly well, but I'll try my best. So that's the county class. That one is County of Flint. Yes, quite a visible nameplate there. Then we have, I think that's the Hall class, isn't it? Yeah, that one's Adderley Hall. Again, I'm a bit far away to be reading the names from here, so I'm working from memory. So if I make mistakes, I do apologise. Then we have the Earl of St. Germans. I think that one's a Castle class, isn't it? Again, very visible nameplate with that one. Then we have British Monarch to the right of that, which is a Star class. Very, very lovely, that one. The next one is a lot more easy to recognise. It is, of course, the City class in the sort of khaki brown / grey livery. Yeah, I'd say brown. And that one is the City of Birmingham. Very, very lovely. Another 440, of course. Then we have the King class. This one is in the BR blue, which is why I picked this particular one. And that one's King George the 6th, I think that is, if I can read Roman numerals. I'm a touch ignorant at that sort of thing. Then we have the Manor, of course. Quick shout out to Kelly, who loves the Manor class, especially Broom Manor, which is this one. No doubt I'll get a story written about that at some point. And then I think the first and only weathered loco we're looking at today, it is the Grange class, Resolven Grange, I think that one is. So if I come back out, obviously it's a bit easy to get all these in. There we have the Great Western locos, and very nice they are too. Okay, so if I pan over here, you can see some of the LMS engines. So first up, it is the Falkland Islands. I think that one's a Jubilee, isn't it? And it's another weathered one too. To the left of that, we have Lady Godiva. I think she is a Patriot class. This is a Hornby Railroad one, and quite lovely it is as well. Very fond of that. I don't think I've ever shown that properly, have I? But yeah, Lady Godiva, I thought that was worth mentioning. He's a classic, again, lots and lots of these. This is, of course, the Princess Coronation class. This one's Queen Elizabeth, and yes, you can clearly see the nameplate written on there. And then to the left of that, yet another lovely-looking blue loco, in BR blue this time, though. The Princess class, again, all of those had names. This one is Lady Patricia, of course. Very, very lovely indeed. And then we have, oh yes, I've gone and got another Patriot in, haven't I? Well, oh well, it's only 2. And this one is, of course, the Duke of Sutherland, which is very lovely as well. And that's a Bachmann Patriot, so at least it's a different model. Okay, so we've done the big 4. Now we're going to look at some pre-grouping and miscellaneous engines. And there they are. So let's take a close look at some of these then. So at the back there in the LMR blue, which of course is the Longmoor Military Railway, unless I've got that wrong. That is Macmullen, obviously, in quite a nice livery. Then we have, well, I don't know why I didn't put this with the Great Western stuff. That's very strange. Must have had a slight brain malfunction there, but yeah, that's Lord of the Isles, obviously. You can tell by the tender it is a Great Western loco. Never mind, never mind. Then we have La France, definitely not a Southern Railway loco, although of course they were eventually. And yes, La France is on the rear splasher, which is unusual. Normally the names are on the front one, so that's quite unique in that way. Then we have the D11, which is of course Mons in the Great Central Green. Absolutely love that one. Behind that we have Maud, the J36. Again, you can just about see the nameplate written on the middle splasher there, which is lovely to see. Then at the back we have the one and only, and I mean that literally, Duke of Gloucester, Class 8. Yes, you can clearly see the nameplate there. Then we have the Class 7, or the Britannia class. I think that one is actually Britannia, isn't it? So yep, there we go. Another Pacific. Then we have Whitechapel, which is of course a Terrier. Again, loads of the Terriers got names, didn't they? But there's just an example for you. Then we have Cairn, or Kane, I think it is, from the Southampton docks. I think that's an LSWR livery, isn't it? Could be wrong. And then finally, yet another LMR livery. This is Sir Frank Ross, I think it is, or something like that. But once again, yes, definitely a named loco. So there we go. That is my collection of named locos. As you can see, quite a lot of them there. Wow, it's a sea of named locos. So now I've got a very, very, very difficult job indeed. I've got to choose just 6 or so of these to get running for you. So I'll keep them as a surprise for now. I'll go and choose, and then we'll get them started. All right, let's try. So here we have the first engine now. It is of course the very lovely D16 named Claude Hamilton. So this class started life way back in 1900 when the first locomotive, actually this one, Claude Hamilton, was produced, and they were designed by James Holden for the GER. Over 120 of these locos were produced between 1900 and 1923, although many variations were made along the way, the ultimate development being classified as an H88, which eventually became the D16s, also known as the Super Claudes. The class was very grand, as you can tell by looking at this one, featuring a hidden cylinder layout, powered reversing gear and an extremely spacious cab for the loco size. Sadly, all of the original locomotives were scrapped and none survived into preservation, although some new builds have been planned, I believe. So there we go, the D16. I just couldn't resist, and I had no intention of resisting, to be honest. It's just a gorgeous thing, isn't it? Cool. Alright, so we'll move on then, shall we? Let's do it. So here comes loco number 2. It is the very, very lovely N15 or King Arthur class. This one is Sir Levine, the first N15 I think I ever bought. So in real life these first appeared in 1919, originally designed by Robert Urey, but they were rebuilt and modified eventually by other engineers such as Maunsell and Bullied. They were originally designed for the LSWR, but obviously, as you can see from this example, they were absorbed into the Southern Railway. This version is number 773. It was built in June 1925, withdrawn in February 1962 after almost 40 years in service. 74 were produced in total. One has been preserved. I think it's number, I think it's 777, isn't it? 777. I think that's the preserved one. But very sadly, the rest were scrapped. So there you have it then, the first two engines. Now I think it's time we had one from the Great Western, isn't it? So let's move on. So finally, from this first lot, I thought we'd better have a Great Western loco. So here it comes just now. This is the Grange class, and the Grange class was one of the later 460s of the Great Western Railway. They were introduced for mixed traffic in 1936, and 80 of them were built in total over a 3-year period. Although the class was new, some parts from older classes, the withdrawn 4300 class for example, were used to construct them. Effectively, the Granges were a smaller version of the extremely successful and pretty well-known Hall class, which made them more suitable for restricted routes, obviously because of their lighter weight and smaller size. They therefore utilised the same design as the Hall, which was considerably old at the time actually, though nevertheless they proved to be extremely reliable and effective for most duties. Sadly, once again, we're hearing this a lot today, but all of the Granges were withdrawn and scrapped during the early 1960s, although a brand new Grange locomotive, once again, I think is being planned. So there you go then folks, the first 3 locos for you. Yes, once again, this sort of video has brought together 3 locos that would ordinarily never really run alongside each other, which I quite like. I think the favourite so far for me is the D16, and I know a lot of other people like that as well. Although, I must say Sir Levine here is absolutely fantastic. I do love that one. She was actually a present from my family one Christmas many years ago, so that one always means quite a lot to me. And then of course the Grange, which I suppose is at risk of being considered just a standard looking Great Western 460. But I think the weathering and the nice performance and the good level of detail does bring it above the others, I think, or some of the others at least. And she does look good, doesn't she, with a nice big rake of wagons. I do like that. Looks very nice, I think. So, I reckon I'm going to take some of these off then, and I will put 3 others on, and we'll have another run, shall we? See what else catches my fancy. Okay, so we're starting off this time with the Coronation class, and the Coronations were actually William Stanier's final class of Pacifics, introduced in 1937, and they resembled a larger and much more successful version of his earlier Princess Royal class. In fact, they were far superior to the Princess, and thus about 3 times as many Coronations were built, 38 in total, and they were built between 1937 and 1948. They were often considered the ultimate British passenger locomotive, and no other Pacific ever really exceeded them in terms of their performance. There were slight variations between the different examples, as you probably know. Most notably, some had streamlining and others didn't, and after 1946 the streamlining was no longer standard for newly built locomotives, and it was gradually removed from the existing ones. Now this example, Queen Elizabeth, was built in 1937. She had her streamlining actually removed in May 1946, and then she, from that point on, remained unstreamlined until 1963, when very sadly she was withdrawn and scrapped. So there we go then, a lovely Coronation Scot at a nice express speed. Okay, let's move on then, and I will show you what I've picked to show next. So here comes a real favourite of mine. I've not run this nearly as often as I ought to have done since I got it. In fact, this might even be the second time. So anyway, yes, glad to see this one. It is of course Maud, the lovely J36. And the J36 started life way back this time in 1888 when it was introduced to the North British Railway to the design of Matthew Holmes. Now in the NBR days, obviously before the 1926 grouping, the class was known as the NBR C-Class, obviously not to be confused with the SECR/Southern Railway C-Class obviously. Now 200 were produced in total between 1888 and 1901, although the final 32 were rebuilt from Drummond J32 locomotives, and the class was primarily intended for freight work, and they featured 18-inch inside cylinders with Stephenson valve gear also hidden between the frames. 123 examples survived long enough to enter BR ownership, although by 1967 the final two members of the class were withdrawn and scrapped, very sadly with no survivors. So there she is then, the lovely J36 Maud, who's obviously somehow managed to borrow a Southern Railway cattle train. But I thought she looked pretty good with that, and I did give her a nice LNER brake band on the back, because of course she is roughly LNER region. So there we go, let me show you what's coming up next. Bit of a surprise for you. So finally then, yet another stunning livery for you. It is of course a D11, and the name of this one, if you remember, was Mons. Now the D11 originated from the GCR, obviously the Great Central Railway, and in fact this is in the GCR green, which is very, very lovely I think. 11 of them were built in 1919 to the design of John G. Robinson for express passenger work. Now in those days they were known as the Class 11F, but this was relatively short-lived since they were soon inherited by the LNER, where they were obviously reclassified into the more familiar D11s in 1923. Further examples were then built by the LNER, and they had the subclass D11/2. They were slightly smaller in order to run on Scottish passenger trains, which I think had slightly different loading gauges, didn't they? They always did passenger work basically, starting out on express trains from Sheffield to London, and then I suppose they did smaller duties later on in life. This example Mons was the first example to be built for the GCR, so that's way back in 1919 I think it was. Of a total of 35, only one has been preserved, and she is static, no longer running. It's number 506, and it is indeed painted into the GCR livery. So there you have it then folks, most of the named locos that I've been lucky enough to be able to collect. Do let me know what was your favourite. I will put a poll up for the ones that I've actually run, although of course I did show an awful lot more than just those 6 in the first half, so do let me know down in the comments if there's one that I didn't run that was your favourite, and also sorry for not running it, but either way, hope you enjoyed what I did run. And yes, I mean, I'll give you a few more shots of them running if you like. Look at that Coronation, just looks fantastic at such a high speed. Bit scary because it's a very, very expensive model, and seeing it run so quick is a little bit frightening, but yeah, it's lovely to see nonetheless. And it's been great to see and hear Maud as well. I'll have to get her going a bit more often, as I say, but that's alright. I can't imagine anyone would have any complaints about that, because she is absolutely great. Really lovely model, that one. So there you have it then folks, keep the ideas coming for these running sessions, and if I see any really good ones I might do them. In fact, I think this one might have been a suggestion from a comment. That was a very long while ago, that's only just occurred to me actually. But whoever it was, thank you very much if someone did actually suggest it. I'll probably get about 30 comments now saying it was me, I thought of it, but whoever it was, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it folks, I certainly did actually, always a lot of fun doing these. And I will, yeah, I'll see what I can come up with for next time. So thanks for watching, thanks for your company, thanks for your time, and I will catch you all very soon. Alright, cheers everybody.